Beneath Iowa's rolling cornfields and quiet river towns, darker stories have taken root, tales whispered on porches, passed down through generations, and still haunting the Hawkeye State today. From ghostly figures to creatures that defy explanation, we're bringing 17 of Iowa's most chilling legends back to life. The Black Angel of Oakland Cemetery. In the quiet corners of Iowa City's Oakland Cemetery stands a figure that sends chills through even the bravest visitors. The Black Angel, an 8-foot bronze statue, watches over the grave of Teresa Feldevert with outstretched wings and hollow eyes. Once gleaming and golden, the statue mysteriously turned black over time, its bronze surface darkening until it reached the ominous shade it holds today. Local legend says the Black Angel blackened overnight after Teresa's burial, punishment for some unknown sin. Others claim the statue changes color because it watches over a murderer's grave, or perhaps guards a witch's final resting place. But most chilling are the warnings. Never touch the angel at midnight, never kiss its cold metal surface, and never look directly into its eyes under the full moon. Those who ignore these rules, they say, will die within 6 months. Visitors have reported the statue moving slightly when no one is watching, turning its head or shifting its wings. Some say they've felt a cold breath on their necks when standing near it, while others claim to hear weeping at sunset. University students still dare each other to visit after dark, but few stay long enough to test the legends. Even skeptics admit there's something unnerving about the way the moonlight catches in the angel's empty eyes. The Black Angel continues to stand sentinel, the centerpiece of countless ghost stories, dares, and local mythology. Whether cursed or simply corroded by time and weather, its presence remains one of Iowa's most enduring and unsettling mysteries. The Van Meter Visitor. In the autumn of 1903, the small mining town of Van Meter, Iowa, faced a terror that still defies explanation. For several nights, citizens reported encounters with a creature unlike anything seen before or since, a being that came to be known as the Van Meter Visitor. It began when a local businessman spotted a bright light moving across the roof of a building. When he fired his gun at it, the light vanished, revealing a creature with bat-like wings spanning 8 feet, a horn-like protrusion on its head, and skin that seemed to glow in the darkness. The next night, another respected townsman encountered the beast, describing it as half human and half animal, moving with incredible speed despite its size. For nearly a week, the creature terrorized Van Meter. It left 3-toed tracks in the dirt, emitted a terrible stench, and made sounds described as like a lion's roar mixed with a horse's squeal. Multiple witnesses, including the town doctor and bank president, reported similar sightings. The beast seemed impervious to bullets, which witnesses claimed bounced harmlessly off its body. The terror ended when a group of citizens followed the creature to an abandoned mine outside town. They watched in horror as 2 of the beasts crawled into the mine's opening before sealing it with rocks and dynamite. The creatures were never seen again. Today, some believe the Van Meter Visitor was an undiscovered prehistoric creature, while others suggest something far more supernatural. Whatever visited the town in those autumn nights remains one of Iowa's most credible and chilling cryptid encounters, a mystery that still haunts the quiet streets of Van Meter. Stony Hollow Road Ghost. Along the winding curves of Stony Hollow Road near Burlington, a young woman walks alone at night. Her white dress glows faintly in the darkness, her face pale and sorrowful. She appears suddenly on the roadside, sometimes right in front of oncoming cars, before vanishing without a trace. Locals know her simply as the Woman of Stony Hollow, and her story is as tragic as her apparition is chilling. According to legend, sometime in the 1920s, a young woman was returning home with her new husband when they quarreled bitterly. In a moment of despair, she leapt from their car at a sharp curve in the road, plummeting down the steep ravine to her death. Her body was found days later, broken and abandoned among the rocks below. Since then, drivers report a young woman appearing suddenly in their headlights, especially on foggy nights. Some claim she stands motionless at the curve where she died, while others say she appears to be falling in slow motion, caught forever in her final act. A few have even reported picking up a distraught young hitchhiker who vanishes from their back seat as they approach the curve. The most disturbing accounts come from those who say they've felt their cars mysteriously pulled toward the edge of the road at the fatal curve, as if some force is trying to recreate the tragedy. Those who've seen her describe an overwhelming feeling of sadness that lingers long after the encounter. Even today, locals drive Stony Hollow Road with caution, especially after dark. The road has been improved over the years, but the woman of Stony Hollow remains trapped between worlds at the site of her tragic end. The Mudmen of Tama County. In the swampy lowlands of Tama County, where mist clings to the ground and shadows move strangely among the trees, something watches from the darkness. Locals call it the Mudman, a creature neither fully human nor animal, its body caked with river silt and swamp muck, leaving strange, deep footprints that fill with water behind it. The first reports came from farmers in the 1920s who described a tall, shambling figure with glowing yellow eyes that would stand at the edges of their fields at dusk. It never approached houses directly, but would watch from a distance, disappearing into the wetlands when approached. Some claimed it could sink into the earth itself, becoming one with the mud that gave it its name. Hunters have reported finding strange dens in the marshes, lined with feathers and bones, abandoned but recently used. Others have heard unusual howls at night, too deep for a coyote, but carrying too far for a human voice. Most disturbing are the accounts of people who've felt followed while walking near the marshes, turning to find nothing there but fresh, wet footprints filling in behind them. Some believe the Mudman was once human, perhaps a settler who became lost in the swamps and somehow changed, becoming part of the wilderness itself. Native stories suggest it might be a spirit guardian of the wetlands, punishing those who disrespect the delicate ecosystem. Even as farmland has replaced much of the original swamps, sightings continue. The most recent came from a group of teenagers camping near the Iowa River who fled in terror after seeing a mud-covered figure watching them from just outside their firelight, its eyes reflecting the flames like a cat's. Independence State Hospital ghosts. Behind the imposing brick walls of the Independence State Hospital, built in 1873 as an asylum for the mentally ill, hundreds of troubled souls lived and died. Today, though parts of the facility still operate, many buildings stand empty. Empty, that is, except for the spirits that refuse to leave. Former staff members speak of the fourth floor in the main building, where the most disturbed patients were once housed. Locked doors open and close by themselves. Phantom footsteps echo down empty corridors at night. Some have reported hearing screams from rooms vacant for decades or seeing shadowy figures dart around corners only to disappear. The most common apparition is a young woman in a white hospital gown who appears in doorways before fading away. Security guards have chased what they thought were trespassers, only to watch them vanish through solid walls. Maintenance workers refuse to enter certain areas alone, claiming the temperature drops suddenly and they feel watched by unseen eyes. Perhaps most disturbing are the reports from the cemetery on the grounds, where over 700 patients were buried in unmarked graves. Visitors describe orbs of light hovering over the field at dusk, moving with purpose between the final resting places of the forgotten. Some believe these are the spirits of patients searching for the recognition and names they were denied in death. Many former treatments at the hospital were harsh by modern standards: ice baths, restraints, and other now abandoned practices that caused suffering and sometimes death. These traumas, some say, left an imprint on the very walls of the institution. Today, the hospital's dark corridors and empty rooms still hold echoes of the past, where the line between this world and the next seems thinner than anywhere else in Iowa. Lover's Leap Bridge. Spanning a deep ravine in Columbus Junction stands an iron bridge with a history as dark as the waters below. Known as Lover's Leap, this crossing has witnessed tragedy, suicide, and according to local legend, continues to host spirits who cannot find rest. The story begins with two young lovers from feuding families who, like a Midwestern Romeo and Juliet, were forbidden to marry. Rather than live apart, they came to the bridge one moonlit night, clasped hands, and leapt together into the darkness below, choosing death over separation. Some versions claim they were Native American, others say they were early settlers, but all agree on their tragic end. Since then, the bridge has developed a sinister reputation. Visitors report seeing a misty couple standing on the edge at midnight, reenacting their fatal jump over and over. Others hear whispers and crying when no one else is around. Cars parked on the bridge sometimes refuse to start, as if some force wants to keep visitors there. Most chilling are accounts of people who feel a sudden urge to jump when crossing, describing it as an almost hypnotic compulsion that passes once they reach the other side. Several actual suicides have occurred at the site over the years, adding to its macabre reputation. Paranormal investigators claim the bridge shows unusual electromagnetic readings, and photographs taken there often contain unexplainable orbs and shadows. Local teenagers still dare each other to visit at midnight, though few stay long once the temperature drops suddenly and the whispers begin. Today, despite renovations and changes to the structure itself, the spirits of the original lovers are said to remain, forever caught in their final desperate act, still leaping into eternity as they have for generations. Devil's Chair of Guthrie Center. In the quiet Union Cemetery outside Guthrie Center sits a grave marker unlike any other. Known locally as the Devil's Chair, this stone bench has become the center of one of Iowa's most persistent legends. Though it looks like an ordinary cemetery seat, those who know the stories approach it with caution, if at all. Built in the early 1900s as part of a family plot, the bench was meant as a place for mourners to sit and reflect. But as years passed, strange stories began to emerge. People claimed that sitting in the chair after sunset would bring terrible luck, illness, accidents, even death within a year. Others said the stone felt unnaturally warm, even on the coldest nights, as if heated from within. Most disturbing are the reports of what happens at midnight. Some claim that if you sit in the Devil's Chair at exactly midnight, particularly during a full moon, the devil himself will appear to claim your soul. Others say less dramatically that sitting there simply fills visitors with overwhelming dread and the sensation of being watched. High school students have turned visits to the chair into a rite of passage, leaving offerings of coins or small trinkets. Groundskeepers report finding these items arranged in strange patterns the next morning, though no one admits to moving them. Some visitors claim to have seen a tall, dark figure standing near the chair after dark, vanishing when approached. Whether the stories stem from genuine supernatural activity or simply the power of suggestion, the Devil's Chair continues to draw the curious and the brave. Local law enforcement periodically increases patrols near the cemetery, not because they believe the legends, but because they know all too well how many visitors the sinister stone seat continues to attract. Bigfoot of Yellow River Forest. In the dense woodlands of northeast Iowa's Yellow River State Forest, something large moves through the trees. For decades, hikers, campers, and hunters have reported encounters with a creature matching the description of Bigfoot: tall, powerful, covered in dark hair, and unmistakably not human. The first documented sightings came in the 1960s when campers reported finding enormous footprints around their disturbed campsite, along with the unsettling feeling of being watched. Since then, dozens of reports have described brief glimpses of a massive figure moving with surprising stealth through the underbrush. Many mention the creature's distinctive smell, a powerful, musky odor that lingers in the air. Park rangers typically dismiss the accounts, attributing them to bears or overactive imaginations. But those who've had encounters remain convinced. One hunter described waiting in his stand at dawn when a 7-foot figure walked upright beneath him, stopping briefly to examine the tree before continuing silently into the mist. Another family fled their campsite after something large circled their tent for hours, occasionally touching the fabric but never trying to enter. The most compelling evidence came in the 1990s when a group of hikers discovered a crude shelter deep in the forest, far from any trails, a structure of bent saplings and branches too high for a human to have easily constructed. Inside, they found beds of grass and strange markings carved into the trees nearby. Scientists remain skeptical, but local residents continue to report unusual sounds at night, not quite human, not quite animal, echoing through the valleys. Some areas of the forest have developed reputations as hotspots, where even seasoned outdoorsmen feel unwelcome, as if they've strayed into territory belonging to something else. Witch of Iron Hill. On the outskirts of Dubuque, where the Mississippi River winds beneath limestone bluffs, stands Iron Hill, a place locals have approached with caution for over a century. This is where, according to legend, the Witch of Iron Hill made her home, and where some say her presence can still be felt today. The story begins in the 1880s with a woman named Ava Spies, who lived alone in a small cottage on the hillside. Locals whispered that she practiced dark arts, brewing potions and casting hexes for those willing to pay. Some sought her help for illnesses or love spells, while others blamed her when crops failed or livestock died mysteriously. She became both feared and respected, a shadowy figure in local folklore. When Eva died, supposedly on Halloween night, strange occurrences began around her property. Lights appeared in her abandoned cottage at night. Plants withered in unnatural patterns. Hunters reported disorientation when passing near her land, sometimes losing hours of time with no memory of where they'd been. The most persistent legend claims that Eva cursed the hill itself before her death, promising to return if anyone disturbed her final resting place. Construction workers in the 1950s reportedly uncovered unusual objects buried at the site: bundles of herbs tied with hair, jars containing unidentifiable substances, and stones carved with strange symbols. Work was halted shortly after, though official records cite unstable ground conditions as the reason. Even today, hikers report cold spots on the trails near where her cottage once stood. Electronic equipment malfunctions. Compasses spin wildly, and some claim to have seen an elderly woman in black watching from between the trees, vanishing when approached. The Witch of Iron Hill remains one of Dubuque's most enduring legends, a reminder that some places keep their secrets buried deep but never forgotten. The Cave Spider. Deep within the twisting passages of Maquoketa Caves State Park, where daylight fades and shadows play tricks on the mind, visitors tell of encounters with something that shouldn't exist, a spider of impossible size lurking in the darkest corners of the caverns. The first stories emerged in the 1940s when spelunkers described finding webs too large and strong to have been spun by ordinary arachnids. Later accounts mentioned glimpses of movement in peripheral vision, something multi-legged and larger than a dog, skittering away from flashlight beams. Rangers dismissed these reports as imagination fueled by the natural fear many feel in enclosed, dark spaces. But the accounts continued. A family in the 1970s fled the caves in terror after their young son pointed to a dark recess and asked about the big spider watching us. Two college students in the 1990s claimed to have photographed an enormous spider, though the image was too blurry to be conclusive. Most recently, a cave guide admitted privately that certain passages were unofficially avoided during tours because of unexplained disappearances of small equipment left behind. Scientists point out that no spider of such size could evolve naturally, especially in Iowa's climate. Yet local folklore suggests the creature might not be natural at all. Some versions of the legend claim it was once human, a cave explorer who became lost decades ago and somehow transformed in the darkness. Others suggest it might be a guardian spirit of the caves, taking arachnid form to frighten away those who would damage the delicate cave ecosystem. Whether mass delusion or something more, the cave spider has become part of Maquoketa's identity, a story whispered when lights dim and the ancient limestone walls seem to close in around visitors. The ghosts of Villisca Axe Murder House. In the small town of Villisca stands a white frame house that looks ordinary from the outside. But inside these walls, one of Iowa's most horrific crimes took place, a crime that echoes through time, keeping the spirits of its victims trapped in a nightmare that never ends. On the night of June 9, 1912, 8 people, including 6 children, were brutally murdered in their sleep, bludgeoned with an axe by an assailant who was never caught. The crime shocked the nation, and though many suspects were investigated, the Villisca axe murders remain unsolved over a century later. Today, the house operates as a museum, but those who visit report much more than a history lesson. Many describe cold spots that move through rooms, following visitors as they tour the house. Electronic equipment fails without explanation. Batteries drain instantly. Some hear children's voices whispering or playing when no children are present. The most common reports involve the children's bedroom, where the 4 young Moore siblings and 2 visiting Stillinger girls were killed. Visitors describe the sensation of being watched, feeling small hands tugging at their clothes, or hearing soft crying in empty corners. Several psychics have refused to enter the room altogether, claiming the emotional energy is too overwhelming. Overnight guests report even more disturbing experiences. Doors opening and closing by themselves, objects moving, and in several documented cases, being awakened by the sound of phantom footsteps climbing the stairs around 2 a.m., the estimated time the killer went through the house. Paranormal investigators consider the Villisca Axe Murder House one of America's most haunted locations, a place where violence left a wound in reality itself. The victims, it seems, still wait for justice, trapped in the moment their lives were stolen on that summer night so long ago. The Monster of Okaboji. Beneath the deceptively calm surface of Lake Okaboji, something massive and ancient may be lurking. For generations, boaters, swimmers, and fishermen have reported encounters with a creature unlike any known fish. A serpent-like beast with dark scales and a head the size of a horse's, moving through the waters of Iowa's deepest natural lake. The first recorded sightings date back to the 1880s, when steamboat passengers claimed to see a great water lizard surface near their vessel before disappearing beneath the waves. Native Sioux legends spoke of a powerful spirit in the lake long before settlers arrived, describing it as a messenger between this world and the realm beneath the water. Throughout the decades, the descriptions have remained surprisingly consistent. The creature is said to be 30 to 60 feet long, with a segmented body that rises in humps when it surfaces. It moves with remarkable speed, creating wakes that can rock even large boats. Some report seeing it bask near the surface on particularly warm, still days, vanishing instantly at the approach of watercraft. Scientists suggest misidentified ordinary animals, like large sturgeon or groups of otters swimming in a line, could explain the sightings. But these explanations fail to satisfy those who've seen the creature up close. Like the fishing guide who in 1979 claimed his boat was briefly lifted from beneath by something enormous and deliberate. The Monster of Okaboji joins the ranks of lake creatures reported worldwide, from Scotland's Loch Ness to Lake Champlain's Champ. Some theorize these lakes, carved by ancient glaciers, could harbor relict populations of prehistoric creatures, protected by cold, deep waters. Others believe the monsters are more supernatural than biological. Whether legend or living fossil, the monster has become part of Okaboji's identity, a reminder that even in the heart of the Midwest, some mysteries remain unexplained. The Haunted Schoolhouse, in Davenport, where the Mississippi River winds past historic neighborhoods, stands an old elementary school that holds lessons far different from reading and arithmetic. Known today simply as the Haunted Schoolhouse, this brick building with tall windows and creaking floors has been the setting for unexplained phenomena that have convinced even skeptics that something supernatural walks its halls. Built in the early 1900s, the school operated for decades before closing in the 1970s. During renovations to convert it to offices, workers began reporting strange occurrences, tools disappearing only to reappear in impossible locations, sudden cold spots, and the distinct sound of children's laughter echoing from empty classrooms. The most frequently encountered spirit is that of a young girl in an old-fashioned dress who appears briefly at the end of corridors before vanishing. Witnesses describe her as approximately 8 years old, with long braids and a sad expression. According to local legend, she was a student who fell down the stairs in the 1920s, dying from her injuries. Her ghost is said to reenact her fatal fall, with visitors reporting the sound of running footsteps followed by a crash when no one is there. Another presence, felt more than seen, is believed to be a strict schoolmaster who still watches over the building. People working late report the sensation of being monitored, followed by stern footsteps approaching when they make too much noise. Some claim to have been shushed by an invisible presence when speaking loudly. Even after extensive renovations, certain rooms remain perpetually cold, regardless of the heating system. Electronics malfunction. Lights turn on and off without explanation. And nearly everyone who spends time in the building eventually admits to feeling they're never quite alone, as if invisible eyes are always watching from the shadows of Iowa's most haunted classroom. Snake Alley spirits. In Burlington, a street unlike any other wends its way down a steep hill. Snake Alley, with its 6 sharp curves designed to help horses navigate the descent, has earned fame as the crookedest street in the world. But beyond its unusual design, This historic cobblestone path has become known for something far more unsettling: the spirits that seem to linger among its twists and turns. Built in 1894, Snake Alley witnessed its share of accidents as horses, carriages, and later automobiles struggled with its challenging design. Local legend claims that those who died in these incidents never fully departed. Their presence still felt especially on foggy nights, when visibility along the curves becomes treacherous. The most commonly reported apparition is a carriage driver from the early 1900s, still trying to navigate the dangerous turns. Witnesses describe hearing the clatter of hooves and wheels on cobblestones, only to turn and see nothing there. Others claim to have seen a lantern light swinging slowly down the alley at night, disappearing around a bend when approached. Residents whose homes border the alley speak of unexplained sounds, phantom footsteps, distant conversations that stop abruptly, and occasionally, the terrifying sound of a crash followed by silence. Some report seeing shadowy figures pressed against their windows, peering in as if lost and seeking shelter. Paranormal investigators note that recordings made on Snake Alley often capture voices and sounds that weren't audible during the recording. One team claimed their equipment detected multiple energy signatures moving in a pattern that followed the curves of the street, as if eternally traveling its winding path. Whether these manifestations stem from the street's deadly history or simply from the power of suggestion in such an atmospheric setting, Snake Alley continues to draw those fascinated by both its unique architecture and the spirits that may still call its crooked path home. The spirits of Edinburgh Manor. Rising from the rolling farmland near Monticello stands Edinburgh Manor, a massive stone structure built in 1910 to house the poor, elderly, and mentally ill. For 100 years, it was home to society's forgotten souls, those with nowhere else to go and often no one to miss them when they died. Today, the abandoned building stands as one of Iowa's most actively haunted locations, where the past refuses to remain silent. The manor's most infamous spirit is the Joker, an entity said to be hostile and menacing. Unlike the lost souls who simply linger in confusion, the Joker actively interacts with visitors, moving objects, creating loud bangs, and reportedly even pushing people on the stairs. Some theorize he was a patient who suffered abuse at the hands of caretakers and now takes out his rage on anyone who enters his domain. Other presences are more subtle but equally chilling. Visitors report seeing shadow figures darting between rooms, hearing whispers in empty corridors, and feeling unseen hands brush against them in the dormitories. The basement, which once housed the most severely mentally ill patients, is particularly active. Electronic voice recordings captured there have yielded phrases like "help me" and "still here" when no one was speaking. Perhaps most disturbing are the children's spirits. Though Edinburgh wasn't officially an orphanage, it housed children with disabilities or without families. Their laughter sometimes echoes from empty rooms, and small handprints appear on dusty surfaces. Visitors have reported the sensation of small hands holding theirs when walking through certain hallways. With over 80 documented deaths in the building, Edinburgh Manor contains layer upon layer of emotional energy. Paranormal investigators consider it a thin spot, a place where the veil between worlds has worn down, allowing spirits to remain caught between life and what comes after. The Headless Horsemen of Story County. Along the rural roads of Story County, where cornfields stretch to the horizon and old oak trees line forgotten lanes, something rides on moonlit nights. Witnesses describe a dark figure on horseback, moving with unnatural speed and silence, with one terrifying detail: where the rider's head should be, there is nothing. The legend began in the early 1900s, when farmers reported glimpsing a rider racing across their fields after dark. What seemed at first like trespassing took a supernatural turn when several witnesses independently described the horseman as headless, his black cape billowing behind him despite the still night air. The horse, too, seemed otherworldly, larger than normal with eyes that glowed like embers. According to local folklore, the horseman was once a farmer who lost his land through gambling and deceit. In despair, he hanged himself from an oak tree on his former property. For his sins of pride and wrath, he was cursed to ride eternally, searching for his lost land and the men who cheated him, his head carried beneath his arm. The most active sightings occur near Woodland Cemetery and the surrounding area. Drivers report a dark horse and rider suddenly appearing in their headlights, only to vanish when they slow down. Others claim their cars stall inexplicably when the horseman is near, starting again only after he passes. The temperature reportedly drops dramatically during encounters, with frost sometimes forming on windows even in summer. Though the horse and rider never directly interact with witnesses, animals react strongly to the presence. Dogs howl, horses panic, and cattle grow agitated as the phantom approaches. Some believe the horseman appears most frequently on anniversaries of his death, or when the descendants of those who wronged him are nearby, while skeptics attribute the sightings to imagination and the county's dark, lonely roads. Those who've encountered the Headless Horsemen of Story County remain convinced that something supernatural still rides through Iowa's quiet countryside, eternally seeking what it can never reclaim. The Weeping Willow of Bonaparte. On the banks of the Des Moines River in the small town of Bonaparte stands a willow tree unlike any other in Iowa. While its drooping branches might seem like ordinary signs of its species, locals know better. This is the Weeping Willow, a tree that, according to legend, sheds real tears that slide down its trunk like sap, marking a tragedy that the land has never forgotten. The story begins in the 1800s, when a young woman named Abigail waited beneath the willow for her lover to return from the Civil War. Day after day she stood watch, through summer heat and winter snow, until news came that he had fallen at Gettysburg. In her grief, she hanged herself from the willow's strongest branch, using the blue ribbon he had given her before marching away. Since that day, the willow has never been the same. During full moons, especially in spring when the lovers used to meet, clear droplets form on the leaves and trunk, too pure to be sap, too warm to be dew. Those who touch the liquid speak of overwhelming sadness washing over them, as if feeling Abigail's grief firsthand. Visitors have reported seeing a woman in a white dress standing beneath the tree at dusk, her face turned toward the east, where her soldier would have returned. She vanishes when approached, leaving behind only the scent of lilacs, said to be her favorite flower. Most haunting are the sounds. On still nights, particularly around the anniversary of her death, people claim to hear soft crying coming from the tree, though no one is there. Some say the willow's branches sometimes move without wind, reaching out as if seeking an embrace that will never come. Local children leave small tokens at the base of the tree, ribbons, flowers, even letters, in hopes of comforting Abigail's spirit. Whether the tree truly weeps or whether time and imagination have transformed natural processes into something more, the Weeping Willow of Bonaparte stands as a living monument to love, loss, and a grief so powerful it changed the very nature of the land itself. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.